The morning of November 15th, I decided to stay a tad longer in bed. The light coming from the flaking blue window of my childhood bedroom was warming my pale hands while I looked up at the ceiling. This had been my view for many years prior, as I grew up an only child in this very home. The only thing I could think of that very morning was the tree my father had planted for me when I was born. He hadn't planted the seed, mind you, just relocated it to where we lived. Simply that, plucked from one existence and brought to another. If you have never seen a birch tree before, some of them can reach up to 50 feet in height. Not this one though. By cutting the edges, trimming the branches, pruning the tree, my father had managed to keep it an appropriate size for our lawn. Not too big or too small, just right, as he said. He used to say. Looking up to the blank canvas which hovered above me, filled with gray and black spots of mold that grew in the last couple of years, I could see myself climbing the tree as a kid and getting scolded right after. As I got up, I dressed in the very comfortable clothes I brought. A pair of my very old, very worn denim pants with a couple of holes adorning the fabric, making me wonder if they were good enough for today. I grabbed the black and blue button-down shirt from my duffel bag and put it on, looking into the mirror inside the wardrobe. The wrinkles on my face contrasted against the youthfulness of my clothes. The smell of coffee invited me to the top of the birch tree I could see from my window. Mother had a habit of making coffee at the break of dawn every day of winter. My father told me I can't act like that, putting myself in danger for a thrill. He would say that with his back turned, lighting up another cigarette that would eventually give him the cancer that took him. The orange glow from the lighter hit the contours of his face. That same day, I saw a branch sticking out of the birch tree, sticking out of the leaves like a broken arm. I thought about the scolding I received and how angry I was at the tree. What if...
The sound of my own cattle startled me. The coffee tasted delicious that day, whichever day that may be. This old house is often filled with people from the neighborhood, most of whom I never got to properly meet. Being a reserved child had its benefits. The sound of conversation and laughter was replaced today with a silence, interrupted by the sound I made as I sipped my coffee. I had never seen it, or rather heard it, so quiet until then. The dry orange leaves of autumn didn't even rustle against the dead sticks and branches on the ground, not even a gust of wind through my windows. The only sound breaking the stillness of silence was of my own doing, through my exasperated coughing. Back when I would speak to my father as a teenager, he showed me how the leaves of our tree were drying up. The once majestic-looking tree was looking more and more frail as autumn went by. He explained how there was something poisoning the tree from the inside, some sort of disease. Was it fungus or bacteria that was eating the tree? There were only a couple of times in my life where I felt genuine fear, and that moment was one of them. He told me there was nothing he could do, only wait and enjoy while it lasted. Nowadays, I know we could have saved that tree. On my way to the hospital, I passed through the same path from which I came the day before. Many different types of trees surrounded this pathway back to my parents' home, but no birch trees in sight. The day I finally left home as a teenager, I was filled with anger and relief. I could no longer stand living there with them. I wanted to follow my own path, make my own decisions, be different. I guess I realized this the day he let my tree die. What if we had done things differently? My father once said he regretted not doing the work to save that tree once I told him it was possible. Yet, he never regretted replanting and rerouting the birch tree. Nor did he regret trimming and molding that tree, my tree. Had it been thicker, stronger, could it have withstood the anger of nature? Would it grow that cancerous tumor if we had never interfered in its life? What if
you count from 10 to 1? Would that work for you? The doctor looked at me with wide eyes. I didn't know him. My comfortable clothes had been replaced by this extremely uncomfortable white gown, as it covered nothing other than what was necessary. I felt cold. I could feel the tendrils of my own cancer tugging my heartstrings, just like my father. I didn't even smoke. The day my birch tree died, I was not home. There were talks of a big storm that would hit the countryside we lived in, and staying there could mean the worst. The worst, for adults such as my father, would be to lose the house, everything he had worked towards. The worst for teenagers such as me back then would be to leave the house and keep wondering if we would ever go back, if it would ever stay the same. The uncertainty kept me awake that night. The anesthetics traveled through my body, making themselves known. I knew at any point I would simply fall asleep, and I had a dreadful feeling that I might not come back. I couldn't know when it would happen. When were we going back home? My grandparents' house had just enough space for an old couple, not for another family of three. I angrily thought about my tree and how it wasn't fair we couldn't just replant it again, here, where it was safer, prettier even. The mosquitoes from the riverside were replaced with more amicable insects. I fell asleep that second night, staring at the shape of a blue butterfly standing on the windowsill.
If we knew about the storm, the obvious impending death of my tree, surely we could have intervened. We could have done something at least. Even my father, so proud and stubborn, looked back at this moment. When I woke up that very next day, I could see the blue butterfly still, sadly, like a twisted premonition. It was supposed to, perhaps, weaken the blow of the sight I would have from my own window. The tree at my window. Fate had her imagination about her. I didn't know then, but I never saw my father the same way after that. It would take years until I come back home after leaving for college, and the main thing we talked about after years of not seeing him was the tree. What if, he said in vain, as he wouldn't change his ways. It's not like he learned his lesson. He knew what would happen and chose to do nothing. Again, I couldn't understand then, but I did now. As my eyes closed, my own path, my own decisions, I chose to do something, take action, something my father had never done before. As my breathing slowed down, I smiled, knowing I made the right decision this time. I shall be telling this with a sight somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverge in a wood, and I